The Central Penitentiary stood a grim concrete hulk on the outskirts of Wilkes Barre, as if separating the city from the freedom beyond. Gray walls with barbed wire overhead caught the last rays of the setting sun, refracting them through barred windows. The state of Pennsylvania was not short on maximum security prisons, but this one had a particular reputation. In the last 5 years, it had been the scene of 4 murders and 2 warden suicides. The administration was careful to keep the cases quiet, but rumors still leaked to the local press. In this concrete maze was Leotis Freeman, serving his 6-year sentence. A 29-year-old black man with broad shoulders and deep-set eyes that seemed to see right through a man. 3 years ago, he'd been convicted of armed robbery of an electronics store, a fool's errand that was supposed to bring quick money to pay off debts. Instead, it had earned him 6 years in prison, of which he'd already served half. Leotis knew how to adapt. In 3 years, he had learned the unwritten rules of prison life, gained the respect of his cellmates, and even made a true friend, Jamal Rockwell. Jamal was a prison legend, serving a life sentence for a double murder. Tall, with a perfectly shaved head and a long scar across his left eyebrow, he controlled most of the inside trade in cigarettes and moonshine. See that new guy? Jamal nodded at the pale boy looking around nervously in the dining room. He'll be someone's doormat by tomorrow night. Leotis shrugged, keeping his eyes on his food. None of my business. Good thinking, brother. It's every man for himself, but you and me, we stick together. Jamal put a heavy palm on Leotis's shoulder. I have new cigarettes. You can come by tonight. His friendship with Jamal was an odd stroke of luck. During his first months in prison, Leotis had witnessed an attempted assault on Jamal in the shower room. Without hesitation, he intervened, receiving a deep cut on his forearm, but helped repel the attack. Jamal has since taken him under his wing, which has made life behind bars much easier. That same day, as the sun set over the horizon and the dim lights came on in the hallways of the Central Penitentiary, Shanika Mallory took the night shift at the prison. The 42-year-old warden had worked here for 11 years. Tall, with an athletic build and a penetrating gaze, she skillfully balanced between strictness and humanity, allowing her to maintain control without unnecessary conflict. 7 months ago, Shanika had first found herself alone with Jamal Rockwell in the back of the laundry room as she checked the inventory log. Their eyes had met, a spark had flashed between them, and instead of writing a report, they'd spent 40 minutes in an eager embrace, huddled against the washing machines. They had met regularly since then, choosing quiet corners of the prison where they could go unnoticed. In recent weeks, Shanika had begun to notice special attention from Leotis Freeman. First, it had been casual glances, then brief conversations, and 2 weeks ago, something she had never expected had happened. They had found themselves together in an empty storage room where passion had taken over reason. Since then, they'd had a few more fleeting encounters, always hurried, always with an eye on their surroundings. Jamal Rockwell was known for his pathological possessiveness. He had pictures of ex-girlfriends hanging in his cell, and when newcomers asked about them, he always answered the same way: "Those women are mine forever." "You know what I do with the ones who are really special to me?" he once asked Leotis as they sat in a corner of the prison yard. "I sort them. Here," he pointed to his lower abdomen. "My initials, DR. After 3 months of a relationship, that's my time limit. If a woman passes it, she's mine. And she'll always be mine, even if we break up." "And how many have you marked like that?" Leotis grinned. 3. And they all still come for dates, even though I've already let 2 of them go. You see, they know they belong to me. I'm in their skin, in their blood. And if anyone tried to take what's mine, Jamal ran his finger slowly across his throat, I'd find them, even from here. Leotis only shook his head then, taking it for a prison boast. But something in Jamal's eyes said he wasn't kidding. Leotis and Shanika's meetings usually took place in the empty technical rooms of the prison or in the laundry room when the other guards were busy with the changing of the guard. Their dates were short, filled with adrenaline and fear of exposure. Nervous tension and haste left no time for tenderness or detailed exploration of each other's bodies. But on that fateful night, things turned out differently. Shanika was on duty in the sparsely populated C block, where one of the guards had come down with the flu and the other had agreed to cover her absence for an hour. She led Leotis to the small staff lounge, where there was a couch and a table with a desk lamp. "We have an hour today," Shanika said, as she locked the door and slowly unbuttoned her uniform shirt. No one will be interrupting. For the first time, their meeting was not marred by a hectic rush. They could afford not only physical intimacy, but talking, touching, studying each other. The room was lighted enough to see every detail, every curve of their bodies. As they lay naked, Leotis noticed the tattoo in Shanika's intimate area, 2 letters DR, framed by a simple ornament. At first, his brain didn't associate those initials with anyone in particular, but then the conversation with Jamal came to mind. The realization came suddenly, and Leotis couldn't hold back a nervous chuckle. "What's so funny?" Shanika looked up, wary. "Nothing. Just..." Leotis paused, realizing that he had almost given away his guess. He'd never seen tattoos in places like this before. But it was too late. Shanika had already noticed his reaction and knew from the look in his eyes. He recognized it. Recognized whose initials it was. "It's an old story," she tried to brush it off, pulling on her clothes. "It's old nonsense." "Of course," Leotis nodded, but his eyes showed he understood. The rest of the meeting passed in tense silence. Shanika dressed hurriedly, saying she'd heard a noise in the hallway and they'd better finish early. Leotis didn't mind. His mind was spinning with thoughts about the incredible coincidence and what to do with this information. Back in his cell, Leotis lay awake for a long time, thinking. Jamal was his friend, and learning that Shanika was dating both of them, he would have to tell him. But he also realized the danger of such a confession. Jamal was not the type to forgive such things. And in her office, Shanika sat with her arms wrapped around her head, gripped by panic. She knew Jamal's character better than anyone. If Leotis told him about their connection and that he had seen the tattoo, Jamal would find a way to get to her, even from behind bars. He had connections among the guards, short-term prisoners about to be released. He could organize an attack on her at home, set up a car accident, or simply kill her with the hands of his handlers. Shanika opened the safe in her office and pulled out a vial of the strong sleeping pills she occasionally took on particularly rough days. She twirled it thoughtfully in her hands and then resolutely tucked it away in her pocket. She remembered seeing a note in Leotis's medical records about a severe allergic reaction to certain drugs, including the one she was holding. A large enough dose could have caused respiratory arrest. A plan began to form in her head. Tomorrow, Leotis would be eating lunch in the prison canteen as usual. She would be on duty at the same time. A small distraction, a few drops in his food, and problem solved. Official theory: heart attack or anaphylactic shock due to accidental contact with an allergen. Shanika's hand shook involuntarily. She had never killed anyone. But now it was about her life, her future. There was no choice. Taking a deep breath, Shanika closed her eyes, trying to gather her thoughts. Tomorrow she was going to do something she had never thought she would do: commit murder. Leotis Freeman's body was discovered by Warden Anthony Reeves during the morning check-in. The cell was locked, as it should be, and the prisoner was lying on his bunk as if asleep. But something in his posture alerted the experienced guard. As he got closer, Reeves saw the slightly blue lips and lack of breathing. He immediately called a medical team, but it was too late. Leotis Freeman had been dead for hours. The news of the prisoner's death quickly spread throughout the prison. The administration decided to temporarily shut down all movement between the units. The medical officer's initial conclusion was a streamlined, sudden cardiac failure. Deaths were not uncommon in such institutions, so the procedure was automatic. Call the police, file paperwork, transport the body to the morgue. Detective Ntanda Okoye arrived at Central Penitentiary at 10 o'clock sharp. A tall black woman of 37 with a short haircut and a penetrating gaze, she specialized in correctional investigations. In her 8 years with the Wilkes Barre Police Department, she had solved 4 murders disguised as accidents in this very prison. Was the cell locked at night? She asked the warden as she surveyed the scene. Yes, as usual, at 22 o'clock. In the morning, when Reeves came to check at 6:30, the lock was intact. Ntanda put on latex gloves and examined the body closely. No visible signs of struggle, abrasions, or hematomas. His fingernails were clean, with no trace of skin underneath, meaning he hadn't scratched or struggled. At first glance, it does look like heart failure or sudden respiratory arrest. Who was on duty this shift? Ntanda asked, continuing her inspection of the cell. Wardens Mallory, Thompson, and Woodard. Shanika Mallory was in charge of this cell block, the watch commander replied, checking the duty log. The detective nodded, mentally noting the name. As Ntanda exited the cell, she noticed a tall prisoner watching silently from behind the bars of his cell. His gaze was fixed on the body the orderlies were carrying out. That's Jamal Rockwell, one of the guards explained quietly. He and Freeman were close. Jamal's face was stony, but his eyes were a mixture of pain and rage. He didn't take his eyes off the stretcher until it was around the corner of the corridor. Then he sank slowly to the bunk, clenching his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. Ntanda made a note in her notebook to talk to Rockwell later. The detective spent the next few hours interviewing witnesses. She started with the cellmates who shared a section with Leotis. He seemed fine last night, said Clint Barron, a gray-haired man in jail for manslaughter. Had his usual dinner, didn't notice anything strange. And you didn't see him taking any medication? Or any complaints about his health? Ntanda asked. No, nothing like that. Leotis was a healthy guy. No pills, no complaints. The other prisoners hadn't noticed anything suspicious either. Only one, Theron Ellis, had mentioned that Leotis had been a bit broody the last couple of days. Like something was bothering him, you know? But he's not one to share his problems. After the prisoners, it was the warden's turn. Shanika Mallory was calm and professional. Tall, with a straight posture, she answered clearly and matter-of-factly. I made my rounds at 23:30. Leotis Freeman was lying on his bunk reading a book. He showed no signs of indisposition. At 2 a.m. I passed by again, and the light in his cell was off. How would you characterize your relationship with prisoner Freeman? Ntanda asked, watching the woman's reaction carefully. Shanika held her gaze without blinking. Professional. He was no trouble, unlike so many others. A calm, disciplined prisoner. Meanwhile, Leotis Freeman's body was taken to the city morgue, where Dr. Miles Foster began the autopsy. Ntanda attended the procedure, standing a little to the side and taking notes. At first glance, everything points to anaphylactic shock, the pathologist said, examining the internal organs. Lung edema, laryngeal edema. But there's one oddity. Usually, such a reaction is accompanied by visible external signs, rash, swelling of the face. Not here. What could have caused this reaction? The detective asked. Most often it's a strong allergen. Food, drug. Foster pointed to the tissue samples that were being sent for toxicology. We'll have the results in a couple days. Back at the prison, Ntanda requested Leotis's medical records. In it, she found a record of a severe allergy to several medications, including a certain type of sleeping pill. The reactions to these substances were labeled potentially life-threatening. Do you have these drugs in the prison pharmacy? She asked the prison doctor. Sure. They're standard prescription sleeping pills. It's kept under lock and key, he replied. Who has access to the pharmacy? Me, my assistant, and the nurses on duty. Plus, the shift supervisors have keys in case of an emergency. Ntanda made another note in her notebook. Shanika Mallory, as night shift supervisor, had that access. After talking to the doctor, the detective headed to the major crimes unit where Jamal Rockwell was being held. When he was brought into the interrogation room, Ntanda was struck by the mixture of grief and restrained rage on his face. "Leotis was my brother," Jamal said, sitting across from her. "Not by blood, but by spirit. The only man here I trusted." "When was the last time you saw him?" Ntanda asked. "In the evening, in the dining room. We had dinner together. He was normal, just maybe a little brooding. He said he had something important to talk about, but not now, later." Jamal clenched his jaw. "Now I'll never know what he wanted to talk about." "Did he have enemies here? Someone who might have wanted him dead?" "Everybody has enemies in prison, detective. But Leotis didn't have any major conflicts." Jamal was quiet for a moment, then added, "He wasn't killed by other inmates, if that's what you mean. The cells are locked at night. It's either suicide, which I categorically rule out, or—" He didn't finish his sentence, but he didn't. He didn't finish the sentence, but the look in his eyes spoke for him. "Or someone on the staff," Ntanda finished for him. "Do you have any suspicions?" "I have eyes and ears, detective, but I don't do snitching." Jamal leaned forward. "However, if you find the person who did this, I want to know the name." Ntanda realized that this was not a simple request. It was a statement of intent for revenge. She decided to change the subject. "Did Leotis ever mention any health problems? Complained about anything?" "Never. He was strong as an ox, and careful with his medications. He was allergic to some pills, always checked what they gave him at the nurse's station." After talking to Jamal, Ntanda reviewed the surveillance tapes. There was nothing remarkable on them. A normal evening in prison. Leotis returned to his cell after dinner. Later, a guard came by for a few minutes to pick up his tray. Shanika Mallory appeared twice in the hallway during rounds. No one entered Leotis's cell after lights out. The detective decided to talk to Shanika Mallory again. This time she noticed small details, a slight nervousness in her movements, an avoidance of direct gaze that contrasted with her earlier confident demeanor. "Did you know Leotis Freeman well?" Ntanda asked, watching his reaction. "No better than the other prisoners in my cell block. As I said, he was calm, didn't cause any problems." "Have you noticed anything unusual in his behavior lately?" Shanika paused for a moment, as if searching for words. "No, nothing in particular." "Where were you between midnight and 2 a.m.? Making rounds, checking other units, filling out a log in the duty room?" "Can anyone confirm that?" "Thompson came by my place around 1 o'clock in the morning to pick up the incident log." Ntanda nodded, making notes. Then she asked the question that had been on her tongue for a long time. "What is your assessment of your relationship with Jamal Rockwell?" Shanika's face flashed with a look of fear, which was quickly replaced by professional indifference. "The same as with the other prisoners, strictly professional." "Interesting," Ntanda said, "because it seemed to me that there was some tension. When you passed his cell today, he looked at you strangely. Jamal Rockwell is a dangerous criminal with a life sentence for double murder. If he's looking at weird, that's his problem, not mine," Shanika replied. But the detective noticed her fingers clenching on the file folder. After the conversation, Ntanda went to check the prison pharmacy. Together with the doctor, they checked the availability of medicines against the logbook. Everything was in order, except for one detail. The stock of sleeping pills, to which Leotis was allergic, was less than it should have been according to the documents. It wasn't critical, just a few pills, which could be explained by the usual accounting errors, but it was still noteworthy. Leaving the prison at the end of the day, Ntanda witnessed a strange scene. In the corridor leading to the exit, she saw Shanika Mallory standing outside Jamal Rockwell's cell. They weren't talking, just looking at each other through the bars. There was a mute question in Jamal's gaze and fear in Shanika's eyes. Then she turned away and walked briskly away. Detective Ntanda made a mental note that something was definitely going on between these two, and that something could be related to the death of Leotis Freeman. Detective Ntanda Okoye sat in her office with the case file spread out in front of her. She methodically went through the witness statements, medical reports, and surveillance tapes. Something was not adding up. Leotis Freeman's death looked like the result of natural causes, but her intuition told her there was more to it than that. Intanda decided to dig deeper. She requested access to Central Penitentiary's electronic system for the past 3 months. This data was rarely analyzed in conjunction with the facility. Too much information for day-to-day needs. But now, the detective wanted to see the full picture. Looking through the electronic badge logs, Intanda noticed a strange pattern. Shanika Mallory regularly used her keycard to access technical rooms and isolated areas of the prison at irregular times. These actions in themselves were not a violation. As shift supervisor, she had the right to check any areas of the prison. But the frequency and timing of these visits raised questions. Intanda then compared this data with the prisoner movement log and again found a pattern. Leotis Freeman was often absent from the common areas precisely during the periods when Shanika visited the isolation areas. His paperwork listed him as working in the laundry room or the library, but in fact, according to the electronic markings, he was somewhere else in the prison. Interesting, Intanda muttered to herself as she took notes. The coincidences were too frequent to be coincidence. Even more suspicious was the fact that Shanika had used her pass to enter a little-used wing of the prison the day before Leotis's death, even though she was not scheduled to be there. That same day, the results of the toxicology report came back. Leotis's blood contained traces of a powerful sedative drug, the very same drug to which he had a severe allergic reaction. The amount was several times the therapeutic dose. "This is no longer an accident," Intanda told her partner, Officer Taylor. "Leotis Freeman had been poisoned." "But by whom, and why?" Taylor asked the logical question. "I have my suspicions, but I need more data." Intanda decided to talk to Jamal Rockwell, but this time with new information in his hands. The prisoner was brought into the interrogation room. "I have reason to believe that Leotis did not die a natural death," she began, watching the man's reaction. "He was poisoned." Jamal's eyes narrowed, but he didn't look surprised. "I knew it from the beginning." "Who?" "It's just a theory for now," the detective replied evasively, deciding to probe a little. "Tell me, do you know anything about a connection between Leotis and any of the prison staff?" Jamal frowned, clearly not understanding what the detective was getting at. "Leotis didn't socialize much with the guards, stayed out of trouble. Tell me about your relationship with Warden Mallory." Intanda changed tactics. Jamal's face froze for a moment, but he quickly got over his emotions. "It's a normal working relationship. She's fair, doesn't nag for no reason." "That's it?" Intanda leaned forward slightly. "I noticed the way you looked at her after Leotis died. It was a very personal look." Jamal was silent for a moment, studying the detective. Then he decided to change the subject. "You said Leotis was poisoned. Someone on the staff?" "Perhaps," Intanda nodded. "Someone with access to the medication. Someone who knew about his allergies." "And you have a suspect?" It wasn't a question. "We have electronic badge data showing unusual coincidences in the movements of one of the employees in Leotis. A lot of coincidences." Intanda decided to test Jamal's reaction. "It looks like your friend had a secret connection inside the prison." It worked. Jamal tensed, his eyes widening. "With who? Wouldn't you have a clue?" Jamal shook his head slowly, but you could see in his eyes that he was beginning to suspect. "Tell me about your women, Jamal." Intanda suddenly changed the subject. "I hear you have a special way of marking those who belong to you." "Who did you hear that from?" Jamal asked sharply. "Is it true? You mark your women with tattoos?" Jamal looked at her with a long, appraising stare, deciding whether to answer. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, it's my way of showing that a woman belongs to me. Even if we break up, she will always wear my mark." "A tattoo with your initials? DR?" "That's right," Jamal confirmed. And how many women wear your mark? 3. All of them know what it means to be mine, he said with a proud possessiveness in his voice. Ntanda decided she had gotten enough information and ended the interrogation. She had a new lead to follow up on. The next day, Detective Okoye met with Dr. Lorraine Mbeki, a gynecologist working in the Wilkes Barre prison system. Tall, with neat dreadlocks gathered into a bundle, Dr. Mbeki had a reputation as a professional who was not afraid to tell the truth. I'm investigating the death of inmate Leotis Freeman, Ntanda began after the introduction. And I need information about Warden Shanika Mallory. I can't violate doctor-patient confidentiality without a warrant, the doctor immediately warned. I have a warrant. Ntanda pulled out a document. This is a murder investigation, Dr. Mbeki. Shanika Mallory is the prime suspect. The gynecologist scrutinized the warrant, then nodded. What exactly are you interested in? Does Shanika Mallory have any special markings or tattoos in her intimate areas? Dr. Mbeki raised her eyebrows in surprise, but after a pause replied, Yes, there are. A tattoo on the lower abdomen just below the underwear line. 2 letters, DR, in an ornamental frame. Pretty professional work, done at least 6 months ago. Ntanda felt her pulse quicken. It was the missing piece of the puzzle. This information is critical to the investigation. Thank you, Dr. Mbeki. Leaving the gynecologist's office, the detective already knew what had happened. Leotis saw Jamal's tattoo on Shaniqua's body, realized she was dating both of them, and Shaniqua killed him out of fear of exposure. But the prosecution needed hard evidence. Ntanda requested an inspection of the prison pharmacy and got the results. The inventory showed a shortage of several tablets of the very same sedative found in Leotis's blood. According to the logbook, Shanika Mallory had last accessed the pharmacy, ostensibly to obtain a first aid kit. Another important discovery was the surveillance footage. One of them showed Shanika briefly lingering near a tray of food for Leotis before he was taken to the cell. The quality of the footage was not perfect, but experts confirmed that she had added something to the food. After gathering all the evidence, Ntanda returned to Central Penitentiary to talk to Jamal. He needed to know the truth. Leotis was killed by Shanika Mallory, she said without preamble, as the prisoner was led into the interrogation room. She put a drug in his food that caused an allergic reaction. We have proof. Jamal sat motionless, only the jowls playing on his cheekbones. Why? He asked quietly. Because Leotis saw your tattoo on her body, Ntanda answered, and realized that she was dating both of you. Jamal's reaction was controlled, but it was no less frightening. His eyes darkened, his face a mask of cold fury. He slammed his fist on the table, not theatrically, but with such restrained force that Ntanda recoiled involuntarily. Shanika and Leotis, he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. She slept with my friend and then killed him? According to our sources, yes, Ntanda confirmed. She was afraid he would tell you about their relationship and that he had seen your mark on her body. Jamal slowly looked up at the detective. There was such concentrated hatred in his eyes that Ntanda felt uncomfortable. She betrayed us both, he said quietly. Leotis was my brother, the only person I trusted here. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white. Where is she now? Jamal asked, and there was so much menace in that simple question that the guards instinctively put their hands on their batons. She's under arrest, Ntanda answered. She's been charged with first-degree murder. That's not enough. Jamal stood up, his massive figure seeming to fill the room. She must pay for what she did to Leotis. She will answer to the law, Ntanda said firmly. The law? Jamal grinned, but there was no hint of mirth in his grin. You think I care about the law? She killed my brother, and she's going to pay for it every day until I decide she's had enough. There was such conviction in his voice that Ntanda realized it wasn't an empty threat. You're behind bars, Jamal, she reminded him. For life. What can you do? Jamal leaned across the table, his eyes burning into the detective. "You don't understand how real power works, detective," he said quietly. "I'm behind bars, but my hands will reach her, and she knows it. Tell her," he straightened, "that I will never forget or forgive, and that every day she will wake up thinking that this could be her last day." The guards stepped forward, ready to take the prisoner away, but Ntanda stopped them with a gesture. "I will relay your message," she said, "but know that if anything happens to her, you will be the first suspect." "I don't care," Jamal replied. "Justice will be served. My justice." There was still a cold, calculating rage in Jamal's eyes as he was led away. Ntanda knew it was far more dangerous than explosive anger. Jamal Rockwell was a man who didn't make empty threats, and Shanique Mallory had a lot to fear. The final stage of the investigation was Shaniqua Mallory's final interrogation. She was led into the police station interview room. She looked pale and gaunt, but still held her dignity. "Shaniqua Mallory, you are under arrest for the murder of Leotis Freeman," Ntanda began in an official tone. "We have all the evidence to prove your guilt." Shaniqua stared at the table in silence. "We know about your relationship with Leotis. We know about your relationship with Jamal Rockwell. We know about the tattoo with his initials that Leotis saw." Ntanda laid out the printouts of the electronic badge data, the toxicology results, the surveillance footage in front of Shaniqua. "And we know that you added the drug to Leotis's food, knowing of his allergies. This is premeditated murder, Shaniqua." Shaniqua looked up, her eyes a mixture of fear and despair. "Did you tell Jamal everything?" she asked quietly. "Yes. He knows the truth." Shaniqua turned even paler. Her hands began to tremble. "How did he react?" she asked with difficulty. "He is furious," Ntanda answered honestly. "But it's a cold fury. He told me to tell you that he will never forget or forgive you, and that every day you will wake up thinking that this could be your last day." Shaniqua covered her face with her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet and lifeless. "Then I am already dead. You don't know Jamal the way I know him. He never throws words to the wind, and he always gets what he wants." "Tell me what happened," Ntanda said. "Maybe it will soften your sentence." "Soften my sentence?" Shaniqua grinned bitterly. "Jamal sentenced me the moment he knew the truth, and it will be far worse than anything the justice system can come up with." She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "But you're right. I want you to know the truth. I killed Leotis, and I'm going to tell you why." "I'm listening." "Jamal was the first. We started dating about 7 months ago. He's, bossy, demanding. After 3 months, he insisted on getting a tattoo. Said I belong to him forever now." Shaniqua spoke softly, her voice devoid of emotion. "Then Leotis came. He was different, softer, more caring. We started dating 2 months ago. I knew they were friends, but I thought I could keep it a secret." She paused, then continued. "That night, Leotis and I had a meeting in the break room. Usually we were in a hurry, it was dark. But this time there was light. There was time. He saw the tattoo and immediately knew what it meant. Jamal had apparently told him about his habit of marking women. Leotis didn't say anything, but I could see in his eyes that he understood, and I panicked. And decided to kill him." "Yes," Shaniqua replied simply. "I knew that if Jamal found out, he wouldn't just destroy my career. He would destroy my whole life. He has connections everywhere. He'd get me even if I got fired and moved to another state." "So you took the sedative from the pharmacy, knowing that Leotis was allergic to it?" "Yeah. I'd seen it in his medical records before. I added it to his dinner when I took the tray to him. He died quietly in his sleep. I didn't want him to suffer." Shaniqua shook her head. "And now Jamal knows anyway, and he'll never stop until he gets his revenge. So I killed a man for nothing, and condemned myself to a life of fear, even behind bars." "You took a man's life, Shaniqua," Ntanda said stiffly. "A man Jamal considered a brother. all for fear of exposing a secret that had come out anyway. "I know," Shanika whispered, "and I deserve everything that's coming. I admit my guilt. I killed Leotis Freeman." Ntanda closed the notebook. The case was solved. Everything fell into place. The relationship triangle, the fatal tattoo, the fear of exposure, and finally, the murder. "Shanika Mallory, you are charged with first-degree murder," the detective said formally. "You have the right to remain silent." As Shanika was led away from the interrogation room, there was a look of doom on her face. She knew that Jamal would never forgive her friend's betrayal and death, and that sooner or later he would find a way to take revenge. As she left the police station, Ntanda Okoye reflected on how jealousy, lies, and fear had woven themselves into a deadly knot that had taken one life and destroyed two others. Jamal's cold rage, Shanika's doom, and in between, Leotis Freeman, whose only fault was that he was with the wrong woman at the wrong time. In her report, Ntanda wrote a simple and clear motive. The murder was committed out of fear of exposure of the victim's relationship with the suspect and subsequent retaliation by another inmate with whom the suspect also had an intimate relationship. Justice had been served, but the detective knew the real tragedy was just beginning. Because Jamal Rockwell's vengeance was as inevitable as the sunrise, and no prison walls could stop it.